This is Frameform.
Hello and welcome to the second part of Frameform at ADF Movies by Movers. We were so honored to receive an invitation from artistic director Jennifer Scully Thurston to moderate Q&As following the shorts programs at a weekend of the summer-long dance film institution, Movies by Movers, at American Dance Festival in Durham, North Carolina in July of 2023. The second panel was moderated by myself, Hannah, and Scully, and featured attending filmmakers of the Saturday, July 5th programs at Movies by Movers. The artists featured in the panel were Courtney Holbrooks, director of the film Isolate, Isiah Graham, director and performer of the film Air, Ilene, director and performer of The Wardrobe, Jake Kruty, John Rodriguez, and Xavier Townsend, co-directors and performer, respectively, of Walls Come Down, and Maggie Bailey, director of the feature-length screendance documentary Moving Together. Links to all films, film trailers, or film pages are linked in the show notes. Enjoy.
I want to start from the top with Courtney, your film Isolate. I've had the Beach Boys song stuck in my head for the past week. I did watch it earlier. I'm curious what inspiration came to you. As I said, Beach Boys, anything related to Brian Wilson, his story. I'm seeing elements of like sound, being outside, being an outsider amongst a group of people. They're all dressed the same. I'm curious where this all came about.
Thank you. So I usually make work about feelings or things that I don't really like understand yet, or things that like come up in therapy, you know. And I remember my therapist was like, there's a difference between feeling lonely and being alone. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so then I just kind of, that was the starting point, I guess. So I like wanted to make something about these feelings, but I didn't want it to be, you know, a downer. I'm not that type of person. I like definitely want to make more like comedic work almost. I think this was kind of my like transition into that sort of stuff. And I found the Beach Boys song and I thought it was really funny how it's so upbeat, and it's the lyrics are like, sometimes I feel very sad over and over, and you know, it's very true. So that was what I used mostly just because of that. It was talking about things that I was feeling, but you know, it was more upbeat.
I want to pass this on to keep going on the conversation of isolation, feeling a certain way. Walls Come Down, also a film featuring this one is a soloist, but kind of like gives you a similar kind of vibe here. And I'm curious about like what drew you to this place to find those inner feelings inside and really showcase them in a larger way.
So the story behind this film is actually kind of funny. We were driving into the Poconos in Pennsylvania to actually shoot a scene for another film that we've been working on. We were going to slot Xavier into that film, and we got to the location that we were using for that film, which was like an abandoned ghost town that we had been shooting in. And we got there and all the doors to all the buildings were locked, so we couldn't shoot there. So we had driven like 2 hours to shoot this thing and we just couldn't do it. And then we went to another location and we tried to walk into the woods just to shoot something. And and then we saw like a bear warning sign. They were like, it was like everything was telling us to like drive away and go home. And then we got in the car and we were driving home, and then we found this barn. And we were like, we have to shoot something. And the themes that we were working with in that other film, I think we shot in September 2021. Yes. So this is kind of like coming out of the pandemic. But it was all improvised, just directed for Xavier to be like tracing his experience through the past few years of his life, and basically letting things flow through him as we shot it in whatever ways we thought best amplified what he was feeling. And maybe you want to speak on that a little bit. I don't know.
I feel like you nailed what it was about. But personally for me, I think one of the best directions was just be honest about how you feel. It was he kept trying to say, like, don't give me what you think I want. Give me what you went through.
I'm going to take that and ask another question, or maybe wrap a question up in a comment. But I really resonated with this film because it felt very, very intimate to me, but epic at the same time. And I think that has a lot to do with the filmmaking of it. But I never left you, Xavier, I never left the dancer in the film. So now I know it was kind of a let's make this work situation. So when you got into that situation, how did you pre-plan those feelings? Is that just something I'm taking away from it? Because I think it was a very skillful improvisation, if that's in fact what it was.
When we got to the barn, prior to that, like 2020 is the pandemic. 2018, I had a house fire. So I lost everything, and like it kind of looked like that. So I was able to tap into that and the pandemic. So I think having both those intense emotions helped. And in that fire, I had a fire with my friends. So I had two of my best friends with me working on this film. It was easier to tap into the support of trust and leaning on someone, and also being able to pick yourself up, phoenix out of the ashes.
Everything involved in that film, it felt like it was like these weird like puzzle pieces of like a poem coming together. Like the visual aspect of the barn with the wall exploded off of it. Xavier sharing what has been going on inside of him and bringing his walls down to show what feelings he had inside of him. And then the cinematography of like this image just kind of growing and him becoming smaller and smaller, and the barn itself becoming bigger and bigger. It almost felt like the barn was becoming even more of a visual metaphor for what Xavier was experiencing.
Yeah, I'm super impressed, and also just wanted to say that performances across the board were phenomenal. And I'm also just speaking from my experience as well as people I know that unless you're in a very, very specialized area, camera performance for dancers is not very common. So it always is a process of discovery. And also the drone shots, I felt that the drone filmmaking and just the general moving camera filmmaking was spectacular, because when you think of drones and like their original intent, essentially they were meant for surveillance and almost like depersonalizing whoever's in frame for, elimination really. But the drone work here almost like brought us into the subjects or the dancers even more. It was almost like the further away it got, the more into the internal space that we got as well. I know that we have some of the performers here. I would like to hear about what your experience with camera performance has been, and how do you get comfortable in front of the camera? Like, is there a conversation that you have with a DP, or is there a technique that you have to go to in order to get to comfortable places? Or conversely, for any directors, is there any way that you direct the performers to get them comfortable?
So this is an interesting question, and typically I'm the director. So I teach dance and I direct a company, but my piece was made during the pandemic, and it was like a month into lockdown. So I had been working with my company on a piece that had been grant funded that we had to put on pause totally, and we had worked with filmmakers in the past, but I have always been interested in filmmaking. Like, I always think if I could go back in time, I would have studied film. So I actually use this as a way to teach myself how to edit and how to film and do everything on my own. And so my response to this question is like, I don't really know, because this was kind of me experimenting with how to use the camera. I think usually because I'm the one behind the scenes, I'm telling the dancers what to do, and I'm seeing like what the filmmaker is catching, and I'm giving encouragement. So this seemed kind of raw and vulnerable. So I didn't really do much, but I think afterward, all the footage, like I just looked and picked like what I thought was interesting as a dance maker, but now like teaching myself film.
I totally agree with you on, the organic nature of how it comes together. And then I'm so big on, and it probably comes from being younger and my mom being like, go in your room and entertain yourself. Because I'd be like tap dancing in front of her. I think the imagination is so pungent to an artist, because I know for me, it could start with music or like the wind on my cheek, or, driving down the car and seeing a snowflake melt on the windshield or something organic like that. The idea of that becoming bigger and then becoming a costume and then becoming movement and then seeing that and then getting in the studio and letting me live the dream I had and then recording that dream, I think, is such an important gift, because it goes through the camera and out to whoever sees it. All the people in the dark, But it's one of those things that you think it here, you feel it here, it happens here, and the people see it out there. I think is one of the most amazing things in cinematic art that we have. And that's what kind of inspires me.
I'd like to tag on to that as well. I truly believe, as a dance lifer myself, that it's not that the world doesn't like dance. They just don't know dance. And I really believe that dance film is the disruptive technology that's going to break into the general population and get them to see dance for the first time. And on that note, there are things that we can do with film that we just can't do on stage. And I think Air is a perfect example, using that retro footage. I love a good retro footage shot. Let me tell you, I haven't used it yet because I don't want to mess it up for myself. But using that element, what did that retro footage, what did that technology for you do to your work that made it different from a live performance? A performance.
Brilliant question. Where we go. So this started off during the pandemic. And so with the masks, and I mean, there were days that I would walk to the studio and it would be no one outside. And I would just be like, Twilight Zone, like complete Twilight Zone. But I loved it because it was like so unique to my everyday life. And so going in the studio and thinking and feeling this breath is so important at that time, even more important now. But at that time, breath was so important because it was being held from us. And so I wanted to create that feeling of breath, but taking it backwards to when it first started, before the pandemic. And so you've got, the turns going backwards, and the kicks going backwards, and the arabesque going backwards, and the looks going backwards. And then suddenly, it's like you took that deep breath and then it stopped before that first breath of, oh, God, what's going to happen to us? That's kind of what brought me to that. How about you guys? Anyone?
I don't know about that question, but I started filming in 2018, and we filmed over the pandemic. We paused because of the pandemic, and I really did not want masks in the film because I felt that this relationship with music and dance is timeless, and even though it feels like masks are becoming just a regular thing in our lives, I didn't want to timestamp the film in that way. But I mean, I'm so grateful that we did pause and have this kind of lingering time for the project, because it pushed our last, in August 2021, we filmed Michelle's class that closes the film, and we filmed on the Katrina anniversary, and I never planned that. That wasn't anything. It was just coincidence and how it was panning out. And that class was so powerful, and that class was, I could have done all the producing in the world and not had it come out the way that it did. And that day after class, when everyone was leaving, we were wrapping out, the sky opened up and it started pouring, and it was just it was such a surreal experience. And I'm so grateful that this project spanned so much time to have that moment, and it to be the last thing, and to be like, I'm done. This is my thesis film for my MFA, and for that to be a moment too was really, really very exciting. So I'm glad we paused for the pandemic for a little while.
And I want to just reintroduce you. This is Maggie. She did the last documentary, and I have to say, Maggie, as the curator for this event. You were the first film that came to me this year. This is my first year doing Movies by Movers here with ADF, and you brought this beautiful long film to me right off the bat, and you really changed how we thought about curating this event, because I definitely felt like it had so much value, and it was such a love story to the partnership between dancers and musicians. I know somebody else here has married their composer. That's me as well. I highly recommend marrying your composer. And it was just, and there was some beautiful filmmaking in it. When I was watching your film, I'm a huge fan of the Chef's Table. Does anybody else watch cooking shows? It's like this artful vision of food shows, and that's how I felt how you presented dance and music today. So I would like to hear more about just those pairings, and they were very different pairings. So you kind of gave us the whole gamut. And there was some beautiful filmmaking in there. There was a moment where you had the flamenco teacher dancing to the New Orleans trumpet, and it worked so well. And I've watched it a few times, and it hit me just today that was a beautiful superimposition of the two different worlds. So just talk more about those pairings.
Yeah, one, I want to say thank you so much for having Moving Together here. I met Michael and Jesse for the first time in 2012 when I was at ADF. So 11 years later, if you would have told me 11 years from now, I'd have a feature film. Like, I wasn't even filmmaking at the time. So this feels very full circle and surreal for me to screen here. And I think my transition from dancing into filmmaking, I think my filmmaking informed from dancing. I like to prep, but then just be ready to improv essentially. But you're working with a filmmaking team rather than having a contact score or something. All of these shoots that I did with these people, we sort of approached it that way. Like, I didn't know their choreography beforehand. I knew how I wanted to film. Like, I want to be close, I want to be intimate. That's what I've always enjoyed in dance, and being in rehearsal and being in the studio space and wanting to be close. I want to get in it with everybody. And so I knew that. And then my DP and the dancers and I would just really work it out when we got there. And trial and error. I used a Steadicam operator, the same Steadicam operator throughout the project too. And all of the DP camera people that I worked with really learned to dance over the course of this project. And by the end we had just a really lubricated, system team on how we were going to film dance. But Michael and Jesse have always stuck with me. I've collaborated with Michael several times since I was here, and I just feel that no big deal. Nothing's a big deal. We just need to be making stuff and doing stuff, and that's always really sat with me. And I took Michelle's class here, but I didn't formally meet her, and I was never planning to work with her because I thought she would tell me no. But I talked to Atiba, the drummer. We had talked for a little while but couldn't make it work, and then Charles Anderson was on my committee, and he was like, just ask Michelle. He was like, just reach out to Michelle. And so I pursued Michelle. Michelle said yes. And she's in Dallas and I'm in Austin. So that worked. It was an easy way for us to work together, both being in Texas. And the flamenco couple, I used to predominantly be a modern dancer, but now I'm mostly a salsa dancer for fun, dancing for fun. And I know the guitarist. He plays with a ton of Latin bands. And so I had a relationship with all these people, and it felt like pieces of my life a little bit, or my dance experience. And I wanted to show, I'm really attracted to filmmaking and vignettes, and looking at different experiences that have a through line. So the through line being music and dance, and why do you collaborate with the people that you collaborate? Why do you keep going back to those people? And so, I was just really excited about mixing and matching and trying to make these different styles really move together. And this was very much a celebration of dance, my love letter to music and dance. And I think as dancers, we know that there's this moment in a class when there's all of the bodies and there's a musician that's killing it and the dance is amazing, and there's this just out of body feeling that is so tangible that if someone doesn't know or they haven't been there, you can't, then you just don't know. And I wanted to try to capture some of that.
I think it's such a brilliant example of a show not tell in a documentary as well. Like you're really is utilizing like the kinesthetic space and the movement of the camera to really draw the audience in, and that's something just so special.
We were talking before these screenings about, and we know the answer to some of these films, but we were wondering if any of these films had other iterations. Were they, site-specific pieces? Were they stage pieces that were translated? And how does it feel to have? And you can probably talk to this about your live work and your screen work. How does the work feel different in the different iterations?
Well, John and I have a dance film production company, so we're constantly doing dance films that are solely, like our original work is solely living on a screen, where we don't do stage adaptations. We do work with a lot of people adapting stage work to film, and there is always this really like kind of beautiful transformation that happens when you do that. When you see a work on stage, you're never getting close enough to see like the under area of somebody's eye like twitches when something happens to them,
So I originally choreographed this for I just graduated from UNCSA, and it was for our senior choreography show. And I wanted to focus on Kayla, the lead soloist, and Kayla was going to be like the outsider, and that was just a fun little choreographic practice for me to practice her being connected with this group, but like obviously like different, like an outsider. So when it was on the stage, I was like, this is good, but it just wasn't feeling right. And so then once I started putting it on film, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been needing, because it's just so much more intimate. You can see like the little emotions in her face, and she really brought it out. She kept talking about how she's not an actor, but like she really brought it out, and it just felt so much more intimate, and yeah, it just felt way more complete on film, and that was a nice discovery. So
I think to what you're both saying, I think there's something about a proscenium in person. There's bodies moving through the space. There's something about that arrangement that feels so two-dimensional. But then bringing a camera into the space, and even though that exhibition is still going to be very two-dimensional, there's something about bringing the camera that brings this like whole new dimensionality to a body, and how you're experiencing that body and how you're looking at it in space. And there's something that I feel so much more activated as an audience member getting to watch dance on camera. And I think it can't, like, my interest in dance on camera came from being like, oh, I can't watch anything else in a theater, like studying dance and being like, I want to see something site specific, or I want to like, yeah, I just want to get close, and I want to be close to all these bodies that it's like, I want to see the POV that I get to see when I'm dancing through everybody. And I think the camera does that, allows us to do that.
Yeah, I guess like going off of what you said about the proscenium versus like site specific. So I'm from South Bend, Indiana, and it's a smaller city. It's an old industrial city, so it's where Studebaker car factory was, and then the population like rapidly declined, and now there's a pretty like decent art scene building. But I think the company I work with, we really lean into the industry, like the old industrial sense of the city. And so a lot of the work that we make is either site specific or in old warehouses, and we don't usually perform on a stage. So we do a lot of work where the audience is very close or like in the round. And I think over time we had a lot of audience members express that it was really cool to see your muscles be able to move. It was like cool to see you sweat. And I think that environment of the audience being very close and seeing those like small movements and things that they don't or might not see from far away really lends itself to the camera as well. So I think through working over time in spaces like that helped me be able to envision like how this would look or work with film. So that resonates.
Well, thank you, filmmakers. Please keep making work because you guys are killing it so far. And it's just so nice to see the marrying of two things that we all absolutely love come to life and make visions and dreams come true. So thank you all for sharing your story today. And yeah, just keep on going.
Dance Cinema's 2023 program is now live online. Check the link in the show notes to browse our festival archives and new selections for this season. Our 10-year anthology will be released soon, too. This is a PDF guide to all of the dance films we have screened to date, plus collaborations and projects such as those with Standard Vision and Frameform Podcast. Get yours by becoming a Dance Cinema site member or a Frameform Patreon subscriber.
This is Frameform, hosted by Hannah Weber, Jen Ray, and Clare Schweitzer. Episode edited by the Frameform team, with social media support from Maddie Leitner and music by Mason Carlton. Thanks for listening.